The state of Hawaii reflects many of the broader agricultural challenges facing the United States, but here the effects are felt even more deeply. Once a food-secure and well-nourished nation, Hawaii demonstrates how an over-globalized food system can impact even the most remote areas. Today, around 90% of the population's food is imported, and once biodiverse lands have degraded. The current situation is deeply shaped by the legacy of colonialism in the 19th and 20th centuries. During that time, the large-scale plantation system transformed the islands, creating vast infrastructure to support the farming of cash crops like sugarcane and pineapple. This shift dramatically altered the landscape, replacing traditional crops that had sustained nearly 1 million people for over 1,000 years. The deeply spiritual indigenous knowledge that guided principles in agroecology, water management, and sustainability was largely overshadowed and is now at risk of being lost. Since the 1970s, Hawaii has undergone a renaissance to revive ancient traditions and elements of Hawaiian culture, including art, language, and a profound connection with the land. Various individuals and organizations have been inspired to take action. In order to learn more about these efforts on the ground, we met with various people connected to the Go Farm Hawaii program to understand how they are approaching this challenge.
My name is Laura Ediger, and I'm the Associate Director of Go Farm Hawaii. Go Farm Hawaii started about 20 years ago originally as really a project to provide business and financial management to farmers across the state of Hawaii. About 10 years into it, so in 2012, we started looking at developing a beginning farmer training program because there were so many people that wanted to get into farming and there was a real need for more farmers, but there wasn't really a pathway for people to learn the practical and business skills that they needed.
My name is Meiji, and this is my farm. It's called Farm of the Fearless Monkey. I started it in 2016. I had no background in ag, and when I got this piece of land, I bought it because, I saw it, I fell in love with it. There was a beautiful view, it was wide open. Got it, and it's ag land, so you're required to do a certain amount of agriculture on it. And I realized I don't know anything about agriculture, and I thought Go Farm would be a good place to start. And I would not have been able to do any of this. I knew, they provided all the knowledge a good amount of knowledge to get started.
Years ago, I started an edible landscape at the University of Hawaii. When I came back to farming, and we were able to farm on this land in Waimanalo, I just wanted to serve the community. And what I saw is we have homesteads here and Hawaiian families, but very few people are growing their own food. And so we worked with a Hawaiian man who actually planted some of the trees you saw out there, and he taught us a lot about how to work with those plants.
So I was introduced to farming through a school grant. Actually, the Bank of Hawaii gave money for a program called Fruit Trees for schools, and through that we started planting. We got 10 trees into the ground. Never planted a tree in my life, never probably kept anything alive in my life, and through that program we went to 2 Go Farms, the one here in Waimanalo and the other one up on the North Shore, and we got to, we learned everything from planting practices, cover crops, weed control, environmentally, not using chemicals, organic. It was like an amazing course.
This is our nursery, so there's not a lot in here right now, but this is where the students are going to start. We teach direct seeding for a lot of our root crops, and then a lot of the other crops that we start, like tomatoes, lettuces, things like that. We'll start them in the nursery.
They taught us how to do cover crop, how to plant it, how to amend the soil, compost, how to make compost, how to apply it, how to make worm tea, all of this kind of stuff.
So we like to also, we want to orient students to place and understand, what are native crops, what are cultural crops, what does it mean to grow here in Hawaii. It's also, I would say, it's a political act to farm here, to grow food here. Any kind of use of the land you should understand that context and understand what you're being part of.
So when the Hawaiians came here, the native plants didn't really provide much food, so they brought with them foods from the islands they came from. And they brought them in canoes, so we call them canoe plants. And while in islands like Samoa and Tahiti, their basic diet is is still the same based on those plants. They've lost some of that knowledge here. And so it's part of the Hawaiian Renaissance. Started with the culture, started with music, started with hula, but now the Hawaiian people realize that the foundation of their culture is the aina, which is the living earth, and their relation to the food plants that feed them and sustain them. So my favorite canoe plant is called in Hawaiian ulu, also known as breadfruit. Why is it my favorite? Because one tree can produce up to 300 to 500 pounds of food and grow for 6 generations and feed family for 6 generations. And we know people, Hawaiian families who have that experience.
I was doing CSA bags before with a lot of the vegetables that can grow here. I wanted to start putting more trees in because it's less intense, hard, everyday kind of thing. Ulu is an amazing tree crop, and there's a huge demand for it. Mango and lychee, everybody loves. Bananas, I have people who are always coming to me for bananas. And then the papayas, I'm doing chickens. We have Nigerian dwarf goats, males and females, and they work as my lawnmowers. We also have an 80-pound tortoise who also is a digester for us for a lot of the grass.
And honeybees. You know, one of the science standards actually in 5th grade is photosynthesis, but then applying it into like our own orchard, like there's a huge difference between book learning and experiential outdoor learning. So now they're understanding that interrelationship between humans and nature as opposed to like being separate as more of one. And now they're seeing our first papaya coming out of our trees, and so they're seeing those firsts and that happening. And the summer program was an absolute success.
Like through the different phases of Go Farm, the first one, Ag Curious, is where everybody comes together just to sort of see what's going on, and there were over 100. It was a huge auditorium room. And then by the time we got to the last session called Ag Pro, there were only 6 women left because it was so intense and so like grueling. We all had to help each other out, and they're still my closest friends now.
We started our foundation, Well-Fed Ohana, to teach them how to regenerate the soil, grow the plants. But then the next important step is to eat, and that's why we do cooking classes using these plants. And what we want to show is, with these plants, you can do many different cuisines. It doesn't have to be just traditional Hawaiian.
The lilikoi that I grow, there's this buyer who will always almost hound me. Do you have any lilikoi this week? Do you have any lilikoi? Because she's trying to buy everything that I produce.
Yeah.
And sometimes if I have extra other kinds of fruit, she'll grab it right away. That's kind of cool. I have like a list of very, very loyal customers who will always check with me to see what I have. And I love being able to like produce that for them.
We have 600 graduates at this point, and so those are all people, about 70 to 80% of people go on to farm or expand their farms or stay in the food system somehow. So it's exciting to see, with that growth in our alumni, what kinds of impact people are having. Some of them are starting some serious commercial farms. Some of them are maybe just doing more within their communities, and some people are actually applying that in their other careers or as teachers.
Changing that plantation mentality is important, because even what happened was the sugar cane and the pineapple went away. They could do it cheaper in other places. But instead of replacing that by growing our own food, the state leased out land to genetically modified seed companies, which is another kind of plantation.
So when we look at what agriculture can be today, it's really built on that foundation, and we have to think about, to what extent can we actually dismantle that and start over.
Well, I think it's super important, of course, for ag security, for food security on Oahu. It's an island, and if the boats stop coming, then we're all in big trouble. And also for the environment, producing locally.
We can feed ourselves, and we can feed ourselves using regenerative agriculture, sustainable practices.
We really focus on supporting small and medium farms because we believe that the future is going to include those as a really important part of a diversified agricultural system. I think there's a lot of interest from local communities here, all sorts of people at having more food being produced here, and so I think small farmers are a big part of that.
You can grow it here, using local amendments, then I think there are tons of benefits to that.
Being a farmer, it means taking on a lot of risk, and it's a kind of risk and uncertainty that most people don't really face in the kinds of careers and jobs that the average person has, where you get a steady paycheck no matter what happens for the most part.
I was born the year of the monkey, and it was also established in the year of the monkey. So when I started, a friend of mine was like, "Oh, that's pretty fearless. It's like a fearless monkey," and so that's how I came up with the name Farm of the Fearless Monkey.
If we want farming to happen, how do we actually support individual farmers in a way that helps to take away some of that risk and helps to build in the kind of community support that actually exists? And I think if we want farmers to be successful and that we want there to be farming and food, we have to think about other models that are going to help that to be successful.
You know, the mentality changes to say we need to be food sufficient, we need to be food sovereign, we need to have control of our food supply. That's what will change the situation. We'll find ways to support small farms.